Welcome to the Close the Chapter podcast. I am Kristen Boyce, a licensed marriage and family therapist with a private practice, Pathways to Healing Counseling. Through conversations, education, strategies, and shared stories, we will be closing the chapter on all the thoughts, feelings, people, and circumstances that don't serve you anymore and open the door to possibilities and the real you. You won't want to miss an episode, so be sure to subscribe. Welcome to this week's Close the Chapter podcast. Thank you so much for joining me. I'm excited about this episode because our guest specifically focuses on Millennial and the Gen Z generation, and she makes some really good, important historical context, notes, and statistical data, which I find really interesting and helpful. So she talks a lot about how to parent that generation, how our mindset can get in the way of connecting with Gen Z and millennials. So if you have anyone that's in that stage of life, and we define what that is, it's really anyone born from really 1980 to 2010. And then I guess 2010 is called the Alpha or something like that generation. We didn't dive too deep into that, but I really think this can be a helpful episode for you. So let me introduce you to our guest, Tess Brigham, dubbed the Millennial Therapist by CNBC, is an expert psychotherapist, certified coach, TEDx speaker, and author of True You, a step-by-step guide to conquering your quarter-life crisis. She also has the TED Talk coming out, What Your Gen Z Kid Wants You to Know, and that will be out sometime this summer. So we talked a lot about what's different with each generation, how we as parents can show up and connect. And if you have anyone in your life, maybe you're teaching that age or you're in relationship with someone in that generation, this is the episode for you. Be sure to grab the free healing guide. It's got journal prompts at kristendboyce.com/free resources. We'll put that in the show notes. And I really loved Tess's helpful information she shared today. So if you want to hear more about that generation, just listening and the differences between all the generations and then how every generation has impacted the current one, then you'll want to listen to this episode. So here is my helpful conversation with Tess. Tess, welcome to the Close the Chapter podcast.
Thank you so much for having me.
So tell the audience how you got started on working with Gen Zers.
Well, so it really started when millennials found me. I often say that I did not find millennials found me. So about, I want to say 12, 15 years ago, I opened up a practice in downtown San Francisco. So I am, like you, a licensed therapist, and I am in the San Francisco Bay Area. And I just thought, well, I had a job in San Francisco working at a large healthcare company. And I opened up a small practice, and all of a sudden, all these 20-somethings started showing up. And I was like, oh, wait a second, you're these millennials I've heard so much about in the media and in the news, and everyone's complaining about you all the time. But wait a second, you're not entitled or lazy. You're not at all what everyone says you are. Hi, yes, that's right. Your 20s are hard. And oh, yeah, you're trying to figure out stuff about your life and really challenging. And I had spent a good chunk of my 20s in San Francisco as well. And I really related to my clients. But at the same time, the world was so different because there wasn't social media or the internet or all of this stuff that was happening, technology and all the advancements that we had made when I was in my 20s. And what it really hit me very quickly was that being in your 20s in this time of your life of exploration and figuring out who you are was this thing that we all had to go through, but that it had changed. It was very, very different. And so that got me studying this process that we all had to go through. But it also got me studying millennials and the generations and I'm a Gen Xer, and it got me to better understand myself and why I am the way I am and my parents and why they are the way they are. And I really started to notice these things. And so as time went on, my millennial clients, they started to get older and they started to get married and have kids. And then this new generation came in and I had a child. My son got older and he's a Gen Zer. And then these Gen Zers came about and they are very different than millennials. And so it's been this interesting process of seeing these two young generations that I've worked with and how both of them have navigated being in this world where they've had to deal with social media and the internet and being criticized on this very large level, because all of the criticisms that millennials and Gen Zs have gotten, this is what people have been saying about youth since the beginning of time. But it's just that now everyone has a platform to criticize them. So there's nothing new about what we're saying about anybody. This is how young people have been treated since forever. It's just that everyone now has Twitter or X or whatever it is, right? So that's the difference. And I just got very, very interested in young people. And then inevitably parents started coming to me and saying, well, I have a kid this age. So why are they the way they are? What's going on with them? And how do I understand them? And being a parent myself, I felt for them and I understood that they were struggling. And that's what got me interested in working with the parents and trying to help them understand their kids, because it is so different than when we were kids. Because being a Gen Xer, I knew how different it was, for sure.
Absolutely. So for those listening that go, okay, now what are the ages of millennials like myself? I'm like, I should know this. What is the cutoff? What's a millennial definition and what's a Gen Z definition?
Okay, so I don't have them right in front of me. So the average Gen Xer was born somewhere between like 1965 and 1980. The average millennial was born somewhere between 1980 and 1995. And so the average Gen Zer would be 1995 to 2010. And so if you're born after 2010, you're sort of what they would call Generation Alpha, I believe. I think I'm getting this right. So we have millennials right now that are what they would call elder millennials that are 40. We have millennials that are 40, and then we have other millennials who are in their late 20s. The people that were most affected by COVID and the shutdown were Gen Zers, because they were the ones that were entering into the workforce. It was their proms and their graduations and their lives and their schooling that was really interrupted during this time the most.
That helps so much, because I think most of us are like, now what age is a millennial? And we know what boomers are, but we get confused on all the terms.
Yeah.
So that helps us as we have this conversation. And my mother-in-law was just saying, I didn't realize that the people graduating from college this year are the same COVID, like you said, missed out on graduation, didn't get the prom. I mean, everything was changed. Mm-hmm. And then their transition to college was impacted. So when you're talking to millennials, we're hearing now that with the cost and the rising cost of housing and just everything, that a lot of millennials are coming home to live post-college. What are you seeing statistically and in your practice?
Millennials were coming home. I mean, that's what was happening 10 years ago when they were coming home from college. And many of them obviously have gotten up and they've left. But yeah, Gen Zers are coming home. I mean, this has been this very common pattern. I came home briefly after college. I mean, I think that that's been a bit of a pattern that's happened for a bit. I think the difference of what we've seen is how long they've stayed at home. So for me, I was home for 4 or 5 months. And I think what we saw with millennials is they were home for a year or two. And what we're seeing with Gen Zers is they're home for 4, 5, 6 years. I mean, a really long time. And the stats are astounding if you really sit down and look at them of what's happening. This is the part that a lot of times I have to educate, mainly not so much Gen Xers, but the baby boomers of the world, or people that are a bit older who don't really get what's going on right now, which is why Gen Zers why they're so frustrated, why they're entering the workforce the way they're entering it with a lot of, I don't want to say demands, because what they're really asking for isn't out of the ordinary. It's really common decency, if you ask me. But the thing is that if you think about since the 1970s, housing prices have gone up by 100%, but wages have only gone up by 67%. And that's the problem. The cost of education has gone up by 300%. And so this is a bit of where we've gotten caught up. And so a lot of times the older generations don't really understand that for them, they weren't leaving college with all of this debt, and so they could pay for it, but that when they were entering the job market, they had a guarantee. They had a pretty good idea that they were going to make more money than their parents, that if they worked hard and they did what they were supposed to do, that they had this good chance that they could buy a home and retire and that they would be taken care of. But right now, if you entering the workforce, there are no guarantees. There's no guarantee that you're going to be able to buy a home ever. There's no pensions. There's no 401k matching. There's barely health care. And now you don't even make enough money to really even to pay for anything. And we see people get on TikTok and other platforms talking about, hey, I make three times the amount of minimum wage and I can't make it, right? We see people talking about that and the frustration levels and the anger that people feel. So this is why when you see these young people saying, okay, forget it, I quit, or no, I'm not going to come in an hour early, or no, I'm not going to work a bunch of time extra for no extra money. And I think that a lot of the older generations see this as laziness or entitlement, or that you don't have that gumption or that drive, or that you think that everything should be handed to you. And it's like, no. They don't expect to get the keys of the company. They don't expect to be CEOs. They're just saying that, hey, I want what you had. I want a chance. I want to feel like what I'm doing matters and means something. And if I'm not going to get paid for my time and energy, then I need to go figure out how to get paid for my time and energy because I've got to pay my bills.
That was so helpful how you explained it. I think this is helpful to reframe with stats, with this is numbers, and this is why they are setting more boundaries for themselves.
Yes.
And this is why they are looking at the bigger picture of, okay, I'm only getting paid so much. Here are my expenses. I'm not going to work overtime. Like they're boundaried with it. How do you coach a parent that really struggles with this idea of laziness or entitlement? Because that seems to be a thread. Because like when I was your age, I was doing whatever it takes to make ends meet. You know, that kind of a belief system. How do you work with parents in the entitlement specifically, and then the laziness piece?
Well, I think a lot of it is looking at what's going on with your kid. Because I've had a lot of parents that have called me up and said, I want you to work with my kid and so worried about them. And I'll start asking them some questions like, okay, so are you supporting your child? No. Okay, so what's going on with them? Are they in danger in some way, shape, or form? No. Okay, so what's happening? Well, they're working, they're catering, they're doing some work, part-time catering, and they're living with their friend in Brooklyn, and so they have cheaper rent. And I said, so are you paying for anything? Well, we pay for some Ubers here and there. I said, so is that a problem for you? No, we don't mind paying for the Ubers. So are they okay? And so what's the problem? Well, we're just worried they don't have a life plan. And I said, so what should their life plan be? Well, we don't know. They're playing their music on the weekends, and we really like that for them. Right? You can see already a lot of times, I think that parents feel like they should worry. Like I said, I'm a parent too. So sometimes you worry because you feel like you should be worrying. So usually I start with, is there really something going on? Or are they maybe not doing what you feel like they should be doing? If they are just kind of living, is this some of this your own judgment around the fact that they're not achieving big things, that they're just sort of living their lives, paying their bills? Because quite frankly, if you're not paying for anything, if you're not supporting them and their lives, you kind of don't have say on how they're living their lives, really, at the end of the day. So right there, that's one big point, which is you cannot comment on it. That's it. Now, if you are supporting them, that's a different story. If you are supporting them, then it really comes down to how are you supporting them and in which ways are you supporting them and how much do you want to be supporting them? And I think that some of that is looking at how much are they working, and are they working a ton? And it's simply because are they just not working very smart, and that they're working a ton and it's not a matter of laziness? They're just not being very smart about it. Is it that they're wasting a lot of money? Is that the issue? Like, part of the beginnings of coaching parents is really trying to drill down and figure out what exactly is going on here, like what's happening. Because there are times where you really do get a kid where it truly is that they're just not doing anything. They truly aren't doing anything. But most of the time, what you do find is that when you do get a kid that's really not doing anything, there's something else going on. There's usually some sort of mental health issue going on. There's some sort of maybe substance abuse issue going on. So it's very rare that a kid is just being lazy just for the sake of being lazy. And that's one thing that parents have to recognize, is that we as people, we all want to have a purpose in life. Nobody just wants to just stare at a wall. People do want to have a purpose. They want to have meaning. They want to have drive. People want to go out in life and do things. And so if your kid is being, quote unquote, lazy, there's a reason behind it. There's something's happening here. And so part of this is being a little bit of a detective and trying to figure out with your kid, what's happening here? Why? Why are they, I hate the word lazy, because it's like, why are they stuck? Why are they just sitting in their room all day long? There's got to be something else going on here. And how do we start to parse out and figure that out? And I think that one piece might be that with the pandemic and the isolation, I think there's a lot of kids out there that are overwhelmed and scared just by the world became a very scary place. And so some of it might be they just need more help kind of coming out into the world. So what does that look like? And how do you help them start to come out of their room more and out into the world more, step by step by step? And you create challenges for them to get out of their room and out of the house. And I think that it is a combination of things. I think that you do have to challenge your kid. I don't think that you should be accommodating them all the time. I think that you do have to challenge your child and be confident that they can do hard things. But I think you are the expert of your child. So I think you need to know how quickly you should go with them. I think every kid's different, right? Some kids you can go real fast with them and some kids you can go real slow. My son he is not great with transitions, So I know with him that I need to give him a long time with a transition, long, much longer than I even think he would even need. I need to give that to him. And so what I need to learn how to do is be patient with it and recognize and don't panic. Like, he will get there. It just will be 20 times longer than I think it should be. But it's just like, okay, he'll do it. And I think for parents, that's the part that we have to work on, is just remember your kid will get there. It just won't be in the time frame that you want it to be.
How important is doing your own work as a parent? Because I think for millennials, Gen Z, it doesn't matter what age we are, but how important does that play a role in understanding that every generation is different? Like, there are obviously, we're humans and we have a commonality in terms of being human and what we need, but what the environment can be totally different than what we were raised. I mean, with technology, that's a whole new element. Social media is a whole new element. Like, we didn't really have those things, which do impact development and psyche. So talk to me about our own work as parents.
And you know this, right? The work that we do on ourselves, that's everything. Because as parents, the buck stops with us. It never ends. Kids are only as healthy as their parents. It's really the truth. And so how our health and how sane we are is really, really important. And I went through this too with my son, where I felt like, oh, when I was your age, I was taking the bus across town and I was doing this and I was doing that. My husband and I would do that a lot, to the point where my son was just kind of like, stop, that was you. And it took me a minute to be like, you know what, you're right. That was us. We were different people and it was a different time and we are different people. Okay, yeah, you're right. Got it. And since that time, I've really been very mindful not to bring that up anymore. And even though there are times that I feel like, oh God, I wish my son had a little bit more grittiness that my husband and I might have. Being a Gen Xer, I think that for our generation, I think we all collectively feel, I don't want to speak for all of us, I don't know what generation you are or how you feel, but I think that for a lot of us, we feel like we're too gritty. Like for us, I saw this on a t-shirt once, like Gen X raised on hose water and neglect. There is a little bit of this feral kids of just left out, just good luck with that. And I think that Gen Z, the way in which they've been kind of taken care of in many ways is our reaction to that. My sister and I, we laugh because we grew up in this very small town and there was a very public kidnapping of a young boy. And the boy was like my age when he was kidnapped. And it was this big story, Stephen Stainer, and there was this little kid. And it was a huge story. And it was up in Mendocino County. And the thing is that like there was no talking to us about how does that impact you and what that was like and any of those feelings, no trigger warnings, no nothing. And so I think for us, we've been so, God, I'm not going to do that to my kids, that we've really encompassed our children like, no, we're never going to do that to you, that we've really reacted to that. And so our kids, I think maybe are a little bit too soft, maybe that we're just like holding them. That combined with technology and the fact that we can find them anywhere that they go, coupled with the economy and everything that's happened with COVID, with politics, with everything else, has created where we are today. We were starting this by talking about our own mental health, but that's the thing, is that how we're raised, our own experiences, both as the individual and collectively as the group, does impact our kids, again, as the individuals and collectively as the group. That's the same. Millennials were primarily raised by baby boomers. And the same thing, baby boomers felt like there were too many kids in the family and they didn't feel like they got enough attention and love. And so they wanted to have less kids. They wanted to be more democratic and they wanted their kids to have more focus and attention and more positivity. So there was a lot more trophies and there were a lot more you can do it kind of thing. And then on top of that, with millennials, there was a lot of bad information out there about how do you motivate someone? How do you help someone improve their self-esteem? We improve people's self-esteem by giving everyone a trophy, which was incorrect information. We know that now, but it took a minute for that information to go to like leave our society. And so you can see how these combinations of things, how that happened. But the baby boomers were raised by a generation of people that just went through the Depression. So, of course, they were raised by people that just didn't want to hear from them and didn't have the energy or time, right? And so you can see very clearly how we react to how we were raised, what happened to the generations before us.
I think this is important because we're not talking about that. Like what was going on during those times, because we had a survival state when we had the Depression. So we kind of were in survival. It's like Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Are we going to have food? Are we going to have a place to live? Like some of these basics. And then that carried on that I'll drive. Then the next boomer generation became achievers. Like, a lot of them, would you say, wanted to provide and have resources. And then I'll pass that along. I think it's one of the most important threads as we deconstruct parenting, to developing that self-awareness to understand, like, what is this trigger in me? How did it get to be? Let me look at the generations past. I think it's so critical in terms of how we show up and parent today. So I love that you're deconstructing these kind of generational, what was happening in those generations. Yeah. We can start to self-reflect.
Yeah. And I think the other part of it too is, right, this idea of the quote unquote American dream, because I think that's what we all measure everything by. And I think a lot of times parents, we come at it from this place of, I went to college and then after college, I did this and then I did that. And then this is what happened. So you should be doing all of those things. And then therefore you are successful. And the reality is that really, truly, the dream is kind of a farce, because really the people that quote unquote achieved the American dream were white men that came about between 1940, 45, 48, and 50, whatever, right? I mean, I'm talking to like a very small sliver of people that really quote unquote, achieved the dream, where you worked your way up and then had achieved all of those things. But we've been telling people that this is what you're supposed to be doing. You work hard in high school, you can get into a good college, work hard in college, you can get a good job, work hard at your job so that you can buy a home, have a family, and then someday retire. And we've been telling people this for years and years and years and saying this is what you need to be doing, but it's been broken for I don't know how long. And we keep telling people that. And so we keep trying to do this. We keep trying and trying and trying to achieve this. And it's not happening. So what happens is people, they keep falling down. We keep trying to figure out how to do it. And we keep feeling like we're failing. And then what happens is articles get written about millennials can't buy houses because they're too much avocado toast and too many. It's like, no, it's not lattes and Starbucks and all of this other kind of stuff. It's like, no, that's not what's keeping them. It's the fact that housing a house. I live in the San Francisco Bay Area, and I don't even live in San Francisco, if you can believe that in my Bay Area neighborhood, a 2-bedroom, 1-bath house is $1 million. That I'm not even in San Francisco, and it's 1,100 square feet. So explain to me how somebody who's making a minimum wage can afford that. Do you know what I mean? Like that's
they can't. That's the problem. It's exactly on target.
The problem. So how can anybody afford that? So that's the problem. So it's not that. That's the house that my husband and I live in. And we are two 50-something professionals who both went to college. We have one kid. Our kid is in private school. We cannot afford another kid. And if we could not afford 2 kids in private school, my family helps us. That's how we've been able to make it, is that we've been helped. And in the Bay Area, especially, like if you don't have one member of your family in tech, you won't make it. You won't make it. And that's the problem. That is the problem, is that there is such this disconnect. And I'm not quite sure. I mean, I think, not to get too political, I think a lot of this is corporate greed. There's a lot of stuff happening here in our world right now. And I think a lot of stuff's got to change. But things are very upside down in our world today. So as parents, it's not about like yelling at your kids saying, what's wrong with you? Why aren't you making it? Why are you still sitting in my house? A lot of it is looking at what the real situation is. And I always tell parents, this isn't your fault. You didn't cause this. This isn't on you, and you're not alone. And so much of it is figuring out with your kid, what do you want? What makes sense? And how do you help them based on what's happening around you? Working within what is feasible and possible in the world that we're in today.
Okay, so let's keep going. Let's break it down even further.
Okay.
Because if we have this whole idea that we have to go to college, that was ingrained.
Mm-hmm.
You go to college, you get the degree, then you get the job that pays well. Without your degree, because this is a lot of fear. I see fear as the undercurrent a lot of times in parenting. The fear of that my kid won't make any money. They'll struggle for the rest of their lives if they don't go to college. And we know trades is huge right now on these things. But how can we help parents with the fear? And I'm just naming one of the fears. The fears they have around how these 2 generations are doing things differently. For example, maybe not going to college. Maybe they're staying at home longer to be able to save some money up. Where do we begin to work on our own fears?
Well, I think it's like working on any other fears in your life, which is really uncovering a bit of the acceptance of it, of making it your friend, of accepting the fact that, yes, that things are not going to look like how you thought it was going to look like. Because that's a lot of what the fear is, that it doesn't look like the life that you thought it was going to look like. And so
I just want to pause because I think that is huge. That is it. You had these dreams, these ways that you thought it was going to go, and grief over the fact that it may look different. So I think with that point, just to take that in for a minute, and maybe somebody listening do some self-reflection to go, oh yeah, that's it. I thought it was going to look different.
Because the thing is that you can argue that people who go to college historically make more money than people that do not go to college. And you can argue that, but that is not across the board, right? So if you can let that go, right? Like, yeah, we can get into the weeds about that whole thing if we want to. The other part of it too is it's not your life. You've made your choices. You've made your choices. You have to allow your child to make their choices and live their life and make their mistakes and be okay with the fact that they are going to make different choices. And I think there's some parents that might get into a whole thing of like, okay, fine, but don't come to me when you're not making enough money. And it's like, okay, fine, you can do that. I think I would go with like, okay, fine, yeah, come to me when you're not making enough money. If that's what happens. I think that that's a big part of life is, yeah, you're going to make mistakes. And I think being a parent is being able to go, yeah, you made that mistake. And okay, now you're back. Got it. Part of being a parent is being able to, in your mind, say, I told you so, but not really saying I told you so, not shoving it in their face. But yeah, I mean, I think that a big part about being a parent is learning to let go and trust. What have you been doing this whole time? You have been laying the foundation to build your child's confidence up, their sense of self up, their ego up, so that they can make good choices, so that they can make good decisions for themselves. So at some point, you have to trust that. You have to let them do that. And there's an expression, right? When you keep jumping in and doing things for your kid, what you're saying is you're giving them a vote of no confidence. You're saying, I don't trust that you know what you're doing. I don't trust that you have any sense of anything anymore. So part of this is you having to take a step back and go, well, I trust you. I trust that you know enough about yourself and the world around you that I know you're going to make a good choice.
I've had that play out where I'm telling I have 2 teens, one's getting ready to go to school here soon. And she's like, do you not trust me? And I'm like, take a deep. That was my invitation to do my own work. I was like, tell me more about how you're feeling. Yeah, I feel like you don't trust me. I go, that makes sense. I can kind of see how you would feel that way based on what I'm saying. And then I have to go, because when the I told you so's, oh, that's a hard one too. Because I don't I work on that because I'm like, here are some suggestions. And then when they don't do it, and then it goes exactly how you thought it would, you're like, zip it up. Don't say, that's what I was telling you last night. It's one of the biggest, I think, invitations for us as parents to check that, to be constantly checking our expectations. What is the expectation about? Typically, it's about fear. It's about fear of them living in our basement or whatever they have the fear of.
Yes.
Struggling or not being able to make it on their own. And when you can self-soothe through that, that is one of the biggest, work through your own fears. So you're not projecting those fears onto your kid, putting them onto your kid. I think it's such a big rumble throughout the developmental timeline for parents with their kids.
And that's the part about parenting, I think, that's so hard is if you think about, right, the beginnings of being a parent, your child cries, they're in pain. What are you trained to do? Meet the need. Pain, meet the need. And then as they get older, you aren't there all the time. You can't always meet the need. And as they get older and older and older, you then have to decide, which needs am I going to meet? Which times do I run to them? Which times do I do this? And that's the part that's hard because even now with my son, I don't want him to ever feel pain, but I know that he will feel pain and that he needs to feel pain and that is part of life. But it is so counterintuitive. It's almost like I want to scream, like, but universe, you told me not to, but I was trained very early on to meet all of his needs, to not have him feel pain. And now you're telling me he's got to feel pain? What's going on here? And that I think is so hard, especially for mothers. Because that was so innate from the beginning. We grow them and we feel that connection inside of us so much that it is really hard to stop wanting to run and rescue because, right, that's what we were trained to do from day one.
That is the most beautiful way I've heard someone articulate that. So thank you. Like that really hit me. I was like, ooh, that gave me all the feels. Because I'm like, you are so spot on. We were trained to be attuned, present, meet the need, be emotionally available, like all these things. And then through the developmental timeline, we're really working on releasing, letting go. They get to individuate and separate. They get to have their own life experiences. You're spot on with the counterintuitiveness. And then really having to check in, what need are you really meeting? Now, I think it reverses. Like, are you really meeting their needs? Are you meeting your needs? It's a different dance. Thank you for bringing that up.
Well, and then if they aren't being successful, if things aren't going well, then they're looking at mom. Because the buck always stops with us. It's always looked at us. If the kid is flailing and in the basement, things aren't going well, then what did mom do? What's wrong with mom, right? The serial killer, it's always down to mom. And I think that's one of the things about being a mother that is really hard. I think in some ways, when things go right, there's a lot of accolades. Mom does get a lot of credit. But when things go wrong, there is a lot of looking at us going, well, what did you do? But when you take a step back and look at what we are asked of and required to do over a lifetime, especially if you have more than one child, so you then are asking to meet the needs of more than one personality and more than one human being on this planet. It's even more. It's a huge undertaking.
It really is.
And we're working and we're doing 50 other things. What else are we doing?
Exactly. And it makes me think about, let's say a need wasn't met in childhood. Let's say we miss a need, okay?
Mm-hmm.
And it's kind of circling back. Times that we're thinking, you're supposed to be doing this on your own. You're supposed to be launched by now.
Mm-hmm.
How do we distinguish between maybe an unmet need that they do need? I think this is the finesse. This is the question. That they do need something from us. And then how do we know that's not what we're being called to do as mothers? That's a big question.
It is. I don't know.
I think that's the rumble.
Yeah.
We're going, because they come back, it's like, I think of a pool analogy where they're going out and they're swimming and then they come back to the wall and touch base.
Mm-hmm.
And when they come back to the wall and touch base, we're working on not jumping in and rescuing them because they're still in the water, like equipping them to be able to, you got this. No, you can go back out there. You don't need me to jump in. I'm using a metaphor here to get you. And this is, I think, as parents, as they get older, we're trying to assess, like, okay, I can't jump in and get you. What are you needing that would be helpful? And what do you need that will stifle you, that will keep you from believing you can do it? And once they get to an age, they're going to make mistakes. They're going to have learning opportunities, growth opportunities they need that in order to grow.
And the part that's hard is there isn't one answer for it. And that's the part that's hardest for people. And with mental health and personal growth and all of this being a big part of the world that we live in today, which I think is great in so many ways. These last 4 years and everything that's happened, I think this has been a positive. And what Gen Z has really championed is mental health. And I think that's great. I think one of the things that's been hard, though, is people really want hard and fast rules and, answers for mental health and for what do I do about this? And I'm sure you get this too from people. It's like, well, what do I do about this? And how do I handle this? And the thing is that most of the answers are, I don't know, because every situation is different. Every person is different. Every relationship is different. And so much of mental health and emotional health and all of this it's about you being emotionally healthy, you having a toolbox and things that you can pull from, and then having good relationships with the people in your life so that they will listen to you and will be willing to sit down and have these conversations. And then being able to have these conversations, right? That people really, there isn't just one answer for all of these questions that you have.
100%. Because there's no like A plus B. It's not like formula. I mean, like this.
It's not math. Yeah.
It's not math. There's so much gray and it's not black and white. This has been so amazing. I love this conversation. What would you say are the 3 biggest takeaways for someone parenting a millennial, Gen Z? What would you say are the 3 biggest takeaways for parenting?
Well, I would say everything comes down to empathy. So I would first really start with think about your kid and think about the world around them and what they're really dealing with. What's not your experience, but what their experience is today. And then think about, that's number 1, think about them, who they are as a human being, how they've been their entire lives. And then number 3, think about what they're asking of you. What do they want? What are they really coming to you? Are you overstepping? Are they asking of you all these things that you're thinking that you need to be doing? Or are they really just wanting to say hi and hello? And are you trying to do too much? Because I've seen that too, where it's like you're not ruining, but you're missing this great opportunity to a great friendship with your kid by constantly trying to go in and solve their problems.
Thank you. That's a huge point you just made, because you're overstepping. And then asking your kid, would you say asking them, what are you needing from me?
Mm-hmm.
What do you need just a vent? Do you need just process? Are you needing resources? What do you need? Is that a good question to ask?
What do you need from me? Or just listening? Like, what are they talking to you about? What's happening? And if your kid isn't calling you, why aren't they calling you? what's happening. And also, maybe if your kid isn't calling you, okay, maybe not calling them up saying, why aren't you calling me? Just calling them and saying, hey, it's great to hear your voice. How is it going? What's happening with you? Or just thinking about you. How do you connect with someone and that maybe isn't great on the phone? Or, right? Like, how do you build relationships with someone without making them feel guilty or making them feel either already letting you down in some way, shape, or form? Really thinking through, how do I create a bond here? Because people will end up doing to their kids what their parents do to them and not even realize it.
Yes, because I promise I'm not going to get mad if my kid doesn't text me back. Well, they haven't texted me in 2 weeks, and they'll go, why aren't you texting me? It takes 2 seconds to return a text, and they get real offended, and then they're off to the races. And I'm like, okay, we got to work through what got activated in you, that they didn't text you back. I mean, there's a lot of deconstruction when these things get activated within ourselves. Like if someone's not returning a call, they're not reaching out, and you really want to connect with them, but they're busy, they're doing other things, or they're raising their own family, or they've got, work, but we take it personally. So that's a big rumble, I think, for most of us as parents, not taking things personally, whether you have a teen, a millennial, a Gen X, it doesn't matter. I think that's a big rumble. This has been so amazing, and I am so grateful for you and the work you're doing. Where can people find you, Tess, if they're like, I loved what she had to say, because I know you have some exciting things happening. Where can they find you?
The best place to find me is just on my website, tessbrigham.com. I work with people individually as a coach, if you're in the state of California, but I also have products on there. I wrote an ebook for parents that's on there. I have TED Talk that's coming out. I'm not quite sure when it's coming out, but hopefully sometime this summer. But all of the information is right there on my website, tessbrigham.com.
This is amazing. Thank you so much for sharing your wisdom and all that you've learned with us, because this is a topic that many of us are in the middle of. And so anytime we can hear any helpful parenting information, self-reflection, it can make such a difference. So thanks, Tess, so much for being here.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for listening to the Close the Chapter podcast. My hope is that you took home some actionable steps along with motivation, inspiration, and hope for making sustainable change in your life. If you enjoyed this episode, click the subscribe button to be sure to get the updated episodes every week, and share with a friend or a family member. For more information about how to get connected, visit Kristen, KRISTEN, D, Boyce, BOICE.com. Thanks, and have a great day.